Good evening. My name is Ashok Kamath. I am with the IIT Alumni Center here in Bengaluru. And welcome to our webinar series, something that we've been hosting from April of this year. This is our 30th webinar. And for those who have been watching us over the last month, this is the third in the series of what we call our Atmanirbhar webinars. The first one was delivered by Dr. Baba Saheb Kalyani, the chairman of the Bharat Forge Group, which was about a month ago, right after Diwali. And we were talking there about manufacturing in this paradigm called Atmanirbhar for us. 2 weeks ago, we had kind of brought from manufacturing, we walked into energy, and we had Sitapati Chandar, an IIT Delhi alumnus who worked extensively with NTPC and with the Asian Development Bank to talk about issues concerning energy and different energies. And continuing in that vein, today we have with us not an engineer, a political science student, but a passionate physicist by choice. And sometimes I think he can be better than all of us from the IITs. So I'd like to introduce Upendra Tripathy, who's currently the Director General of the International Solar Alliance. As mostly all of us do know that India is well on its way to achieving its solar power generating targets that we had set for ourselves. I think we had a target of 175 gigawatts by 2025. And I think we are ahead of the curve, and potentially we have the possibility of doing far more than what we committed to do. And a lot of that has to do with people like Upendra Tripathy, who has been passionately driving the issue of solar energy through the Solar Energy Corporation of India, the National Institute of Solar Energy, the National Institute of Wind Energy, the National Institute of Bioenergy, the Association of Renewable Energy Agencies of the states, and currently with the International Solar Alliance, right? It would be fair to say that Mr. Tripathy has galvanized both the Ministry of Renewable Energy and the Solar Energy Corporation through a plethora of new and imaginative policy measures. I have watched him in Bangalore during his career within the IAS, where he was involved in the setting up of many institutions. SysTup at the Indian Institute of Science is one such institution, the Environmental Management Policy Research Institute, Akshara Foundation, which coincidentally I head right now, and was responsible for the turnaround of the Bangalore Metropolitan Transport Corporation, BMTC, into a profit-making body. Recipient of the Prime Minister's Award for Excellence in Public Administration in 2009, and many other honors. So over 3.5 decades of experience in public service with passion, inclusion, and empathy. Along with him today, moderating this conversation, we have Shri VP Baligar, a batchmate in the IAS of Mr. Tripathy. Baligar is, for many of you, would not be a new face because he's already moderated a couple of our webinars when we had Munish Mudgil and somebody else. I think there were 2 other webinars that he moderated. After doing his BTech in civil engineering from IIT Bombay, Mr. Baligar joined the IAS and held multiple positions, both at the state level and at the central level, including chairman of HUDCO. And he has since retired, but he still leads a very active life, low key, as he's wont to do, but still a very active person. I also like to introduce my colleague, Dr. Sushila Venkatraman, who will, at the end of this webinar, provide a summary and a wrap up so that we all have a quick summary of what has happened during the course. Unusual today that we don't have PowerPoint. I think there is a lot of PowerPoint fatigue amongst all of us. So, Upendraji, thank you very much for not using PowerPoint today. I'm sure your conversation itself will keep the entire audience engaged. And with that, I hand over to you, sir, for you to speak. And Mr. Baligar will moderate. You can look at the Q&A box for questions. For all our audience, whatever questions you have, please put them in the Q&A box at the bottom right of your screen, so that that will be the place that we will be moderating for questions, not the chat box. And Mr. Baligar would then bring it up at the right times, and you'll have your questions answered. So with that, over to you, Mr. Tripathi.
Thank you, Ashok. Thank you, Veres. And thank you, Susila. And congratulations to all of you. I'm told the IIT crowd should be happy, because today there is something I read that out of the 84 secretaries in Government of India, more than 50% are from IITs. So at some point, I remember, when I got into IIS in the year 1980 from JNU, out of 126, we had 33 from JNU. And in Missouri, we had this mini JNU center. Anyway, today the issue is, I'm supposed to talk, how to, the solar resource rich countries, how do you harness their power? And I won't tell you, something that you can get in Google. In fact, I think all the praise that was given to me to have started this, in a sense, a revolution is not me. I must go back to the year 2014, 1st of April. I joined as Secretary, New and Renewable Energy. And as usual, I had no experience in renewable energy. I was working in Brussels before that. And my predecessor was Satish Agnihotri, who is from Mumbai IIT, and right now is a professor there. He was my predecessor. And before coming here, I had requested for a post where there is light work, because I had some family issues. And the then cabinet secretary told me, which post do you want? And I said, give me a post called secretary coordination. And well, let me clarify, please don't quote me, or this is not for recording, because I think, you deserve something which you won't get in books or get in Google also. And then they said, there is a post of Secretary, Ministry of New and Renewable Energy, not much of work, and you can go there. That is how I ended up, in Ministry of New and Renewable Energy, 1st of April. I had Honorable Minister Farooq Abdullah as Minister for New and Renewable Energy. And after a lot of nice talks, he's a person who really, talks royally, very nicely. We discussed everything in the world, including where you get the best biryani. And we did some simple maths in the ministry, always you do when you go as secretary. We found that the ministry had to pay to the provinces, what you call subsidy areas, 3,300 crores. And our budget that year was 1,500 crores. So essentially I told the Honorable Minister that we don't have to do anything for next 2 years, because our dues, areas to the provinces was 3,300 crores, and our budget was 1,500 crores. For next 2 years, we can keep on paying. And then we went to meet the finance minister the next day, saying that, look, there is a crisis. We have a lot of areas and not much of budget. And then my honorable minister introduced me to the finance minister, that he is the secretary MNRE. And promptly the finance minister asked, what is MNRE? I knew, so I said, this is the Ministry of Gobar Gas and Subsidy. And well, he understood immediately. I mean, this is how the ministry was known as subsidy. And April and May, and then May, a new ministry is formed. The Prime Minister Modi comes in, and we, of course, had heard about the book he wrote, the against inconvenient truth, the convenient action. And we knew that renewable energy was going to get an impetus because the Prime Minister was quite devoted to that. And we had a very young minister called Mr. Piyush Goyal. And he was really impatient to do things, and first time minister. And he used to talk with two mobiles at the same time. And then one day we got a call that the Prime Minister would like to meet the Secretary MNRE, which was me. And entire ministry was really very happy because very rarely the Secretary of the Ministry of New and Renewable Energy would be called to the Prime Minister's office for a meeting with the Honorable Prime Minister. Well, I went and met, and Honorable Prime Minister said, we want 100,000 megawatt of solar. And as I told you, I didn't know much about solar, not about renewable, hardly a month and a half old. And typically, I knew that we had a lot of land, some 200,000 square kilometers in Rajasthan of desert. We had 3 million hectares of wasteland. So promptly I said, it's not very difficult, or it's easy. We have a lot of land and we can actually do it. So he was quite happy, so was I. I came back and rang up to my predecessor saying that, look, Honorable PM had called, and usually you boast a lot before your batchmates, and Vires is there, Mr. Baligar is there, you would know. And, but then my batchmate told me, look, in Government of India, you are new as a secretary, but you must not say something or write something or do something without consulting your joint secretaries. So I reached office and called my joint secretary, and I said, look, PM asked like this, I told like this, is it okay? And my joint secretary, who is a, top class officer, now actually he's the Secretary of Petroleum, he told it was not okay. In fact, it was not correct. He told me that a month before I joined, the ministry had written to the PMO that 100,000 megawatt cannot be done because there was no demand, there was no money, there was no land. What do you do? I went to Mr. Piyush Goyal and told, sir, I made a mistake. So I'll go back and tell the Honorable Prime Minister that I made a mistake. And the mistake is that I didn't know that the ministry had written such a letter to the PMO. And Mr. Piyush Goyal, being the dynamic person he is, he said, no, I don't think the PM is going to listen to you, that it cannot be done. Find a way how to do it. And so he suggested that all the 69 officers meet and do something called Chintan or Manthan, where you deliberate, you have a dialogue, and you start that. So that is what we did. We all met. We had some 3 hours debate, how much of land, how much of capital, how much of technology, how much of training, capacity building we need to bring this 100 gigawatt of solar by 2022. And at the end, we all thought the best way to decide, because, many said it is not possible. I said, let us have a voting. And hands went up. I didn't vote because I was chairing. But then, except one person, everybody said that it was not possible. And the gentleman who didn't raise his hand, who implied that it's possible, everybody else laughed because he was going to retire that month end. Well, it was not a very, good thing that you tell something to the Prime Minister and your own minister says you find a way to do it. And here you do some manthan and chintan, and after that majority of people are almost universally there. Everybody says it cannot be done. And then what we did, after that there was a meeting in South Korea, and the whole team was there. Somebody from CII was also there, Confederation of Indian Industry, and she suggested that there is one way out, and that way is let us have a renewable energy invest summit, and we call it RE Invest. And that is what you must have heard about this, because first time we did it in 2015, in 2017, and this time it was the third term. It became a global event. And once that idea came, reinvest, we made a plan, and we met the Honorable PM saying that, look, we are going to have a summit where we will get all the industry people together. And the Honorable PM said, ये तो होता रहता है. I mean, people meet, people sign MOUs, but what concrete thing will come out of it? And that is where the real challenge came, because it has to be something different, and it has to be something out of which the concrete things must come out. So my joint secretaries, and other officers, they had brilliant ideas. So what they did, they first told the industry people that 10 of you who give they introduced something called green certificate. It essentially read that I, the CMD of company so and so, maybe Reliance or Tata and all that, and we undertake to put so many megawatt of solar and wind by the year 2022. And there has to be a figure in megawatts. Later on, of course, we would make it gigawatt. And then we announced that the best 10 companies will go in Vigyan Bhavan. They will shake hands with the Prime Minister. And the best 10. So there was so much of competition among the industries, top industries, both MNCs as well as indigenous companies, that at the end of it, we found that the written commitment from the industry was 277,000 megawatt. And solar, we need 100,000 megawatt. And the best 10 companies who had given, written commitment for more than 5,000 megawatt, they did go and shake hands. But before this, there was another thing interesting. When we went back to the PMO and told that, look, I mean, 277,000 commitment we have got, the response was, but where is the money? And that set another chain reaction. The first thing we did, we talked to the, World Bank and foreign banks, and they never gave any commitment. In fact, we had some 72 foreign banks. Nobody gave any commitment. But we got a lot of commitment, financial commitment from the nationalized banks. We got from NBFCs, and put together, we had enough commitment of around 70 billion. We had a commitment of 100,000 megawatt and 100,000 million. Yeah. So that type of commitment we got, and we called the green finance certificates. And some of them were given the top 10. They also went and shook hands with the Prime Minister in Vigyan Bhavan. And so what we started is this framework that we have got the commitments, physical commitments, we have got the financial commitments. And then the issue came where is the land. Of course, that was not difficult to find out, because most of the states came forward saying that the lands are available. And we talked about, these sidelines of railways. We talked about deserts. We talked about defense lands. We talked about the PSU lands, public sector undertaking lands. We talked about universities where lands are lying vacant. We talked about the airports. And when we made a rough estimate, we had plenty of lands. Land was not the issue. So your idea that I did things, no, I didn't do much. It all came from the Prime Minister and Mr. Piyush Goyal. And it came from the industry, because they were the ones who gave the commitment. But I remember, when I was, those days, each secretary would be called to the cabinet meeting at the end to speak for 10 minutes on one subject. And I had the opportunity to go and speak on 100,000 megawatt of solar. And I remember one cabinet minister put me the question at the end, and that was a very, very question today. He said, what is your plan B? If your solar parks fail, rooftop fails, what is your plan B? And I remember I told that the plan B is that India has some substations numbering around 67,000. If you go from Kerala to Kashmir, all across the world, all across India, you have so many substations. Just put 1 megawatt each, and that will give you the, the 60,000 out of the 100,000 megawatt we want. We will get that from the substations in a very distributed fashion. The 100 gigawatt, so if you look at this, I mean, why I'm telling is that because the resource-rich countries of the world we are talking about, India is of course tropical and one of the, we call it sunshine country. 300 days in a year it has sunshine, and the solar potential is quite huge. And that is how all the policy, started. It started from the type of background I gave. Then, of course, we sent a cabinet note, and it was all approved, systematized. It came, and the various policy instruments we brought in: viability gap funding, feed-in tariff, and how do you tender, the reverse tendering, and that set the way. Now, before I go to the other countries and then come to the International Solar Alliance, uh, I would like to say how all got integrated. If you look at the federal government, there is a Ministry of Power, and there is a Ministry of New and Renewable Energy. Now, this Ministry of New and Renewable Energy, it started somewhere in the early 80s, 83 actually. And at that time, not many countries in the world had a renewable energy ministry. And this itself is a tribute to the country that right from early 80s, India could conceive the importance of renewable energy and and its relevance to climate change and climate challenges. And then when the solar policies came, you usually translate through various fiscal and financial measures. So the best way there again, it was not that the undersecretary wrote a cabinet note and we sent it. It was very active engagement with the industry. We are fully involved with the industry. In fact, when we made the policies, it was more that came from the industry rather than we made it. We only streamlined the things. And the lesson, and that is why there is total support from the industry, whether it was a viability gap funding, that you give us energy at a particular cost, and we will give you this the price of the gap, viability gap funding that we'll make. Or whether it was a question of customs duty exemption or concessional central excise duty, or it was the tax holiday. Everything, those things we put together, the policy that came mostly from the industries, and we only streamline, harmonize the whole content. So the second point comes here. It is not merely making a policy, but if you really try to harness the energy of the solar-rich countries, whether it is India or any other country in the tropics, you have to have the right ecosystem in place. And when you talk about the ecosystem, traditionally we talk about land. Of course, I told the story of land and how we made land available. We talked about the capital, that money that we put the banks in place. They're prepared to give loans, and the companies would manage the equity. And we in fact went further, and we created a national infrastructure fund. And those days it was 1,000 crore that was prepared to pay equity to the companies if they need. And of course, one major thing was capacity building, the right type of people that you need. So we started a program for training 57,000 people. In fact, we gave a very good name. We call them, they're the Friends of the Sun. And the idea was, once this 57,000 people are trained, they can all have a number like Ola and Uber. You just want some repairs, you just ring them up. Somebody will come and repair your, give the service that you need. And then, of course, the question was technology. Do you go for thin films? Do you go for different types of solar panels? That we left to the industry, because that is a very tricky thing for the Indian industry. I know some companies who actually got the wrong technology at the wrong time, and since then, because of the high cost involved and the way solar technology is changing, one has to be very, very careful in what type of choice you make, the technology choice. I would come to the issues of technology later when I go to ISA and Solar Alliance. But in the context of any country, if you would actually like to exploit or harness the solar potential of any country, it is very critical that right choices for technologies are made, both in on-grid and off-grid space. Now, of course, in India, as you know, the energy comes in the concurrent list. The provinces are equally competent to do that. And there has been a rough ratio that 40% of this target is made through the central government and 60% by the provinces. And leading provinces, have been very, very active. I don't know if some of you went to Pavagoda, I went there last year. In fact, we went with 50 ambassadors and high commissioners from 50 countries. We landed up in Bangalore. We went to Pavagoda, and the place was beyond recognition. It was, it has changed so much, and it was not merely the the dark-looking solar panels, miles and miles, that made the impression. In fact, the way that they had formed a trust. Each company used to pay a lump sum amount for each megawatt they put in place, and this money, it went to crores of rupees. It went to a trust, and out of that fund, they started funding the education and family needs of the people who had got displaced. And there were some seven companies from 7 different parts of the world, and the beauty was that the investment was nothing from the state. Either from the province or from the federal government. The money all came from the companies themselves and from other countries. And what the state did, this entered into an agreement to pay the fees or the cost of the power for next 25 years. And the beauty of this pricing, and being from IIT, you all will appreciate, it was a model of a uniform price over 25 years. Now, even if it is, right now it is 2 rupees. Now, 2 rupees solar, which is fixed for 25 years, if you discount it, even at the rate of treasury bonds at 4 to 5%, you'll find right now it comes to some 36 paisa at the end of 25th year. Now, after 25 years, if you think with 38 paisa, you won't get anything. And that is where, we in ISA, we talk about 2 types of energy that we have. One is solar, and the rest are all solar derivatives. And the pricing we talk about is a model, and the model is, first you go to grid parity, and from grid parity we go to kerosene parity, and from kerosene parity we go to near zero cost. The industry is not very happy to look at this model because near zero cost is something nobody will like if it is near zero cost. But our point is that we are already there near zero cost, if you discount 2 rupees over 25 years. And why we talk about kerosene parity? Because if you look at the globe today, 21st century, we're all proud of that, $78 trillion. And I'm telling this as a background to ISA, why ISA came up. If you look at this 21st century global economy of $70 trillion, now we have a lot of things, but also what we don't have is equally critical. We have 2 billion women who have no access to clean energy, cooking medium. Still they use primary fuel, to cook, and inherent risk of indoor cooking. We have also 700 million people who have no access to electricity. And I must tell you, electricity is very critical. I come from a small hamlet in the east coast of India, which is near Chilka Lake. Most of you must have seen this. And in my village today, when I go, the number of people who used to die from snake bite has come down because there are street lights. I'm not going into other areas, how light can give you power, whether the students perform better. The students also will appreciate that, we're talking about attendance in schools and school dropouts. And Mr. Baligar, when he was the education commissioner, he introduced schemes calling back the children to come back to the school. But light in all this plays a very critical role. Children's performance, children's attendance in school, risk of people in that village. And 700 million people have no access to electricity today. And not only that, 3 billion people have no access to clean drinking water. Now, is it okay? No, it is not okay. Because when we are talking about equity, when we are talking about justice, when we are talking about human equality, these things are very critical, that all citizens have access to electricity, all citizens have access to drinking water and to light, of course. Now, this is one background. And If you look at the other thing, without going into the inconvenient truth or convenient action, both the famous books, you look at the flow of capital in the world. We have World Bank, we have many other, AIB, we have NDB, we have Asian Development Bank, African Development Bank, and a host of private finance institutions. But the way you look the investment in capital that takes place, most of the $150 billion that you get for, particularly for solar, it goes to 10 to 20 countries. The island countries, who get who actually need it maximum, they don't get it. And I must tell you what I heard from the Fijian Prime Minister the other day, and he was right. He was right in the sense, he said, we have two issues with you people. And issue one is, he told, for you, climate change or climate challenge is a concept, on which you have workshops, you hold seminars, you speak, and you write books. But for us, it is a life and death question. Every morning we write, we wake up, we see a bit of climate challenge. The island has sunk a little, and that is true of thousands and thousands of islands. With the sea level going up, they go down. But more interestingly, he had two other points. One point he said, the solar panels that you make is not meant for Fiji, because they are light, they get blown away when some cyclone comes or tsunami comes. And the worst thing is that when the birds from the ocean or sea, they come and they find these panels very nice spots to sit down and discuss or sing, and they put the bat drops. And these panels are so sticky, the bat drops, in 2-3 days, they cover the entire panel, and no sunshine can go beyond the drops. And the third point he told is that the sealant you use is not fit for Fiji, because the rainwater goes in and the panel gets spoiled. The broad question he was hinting is that even the way technology evolves, it has a geographical connotation. It has to be in-house. It has to be, appropriate. It has to address the local challenges they have. And so this was broadly the first thing was, of course, I told the policy challenge, that how do you bring an ecosystem that India brought. And second is the technology challenge. The Fijian Prime Minister said, he summed up. I mean, that was just an example of one country, but some such, challenges are everywhere, including lithium-ion batteries in the countries, which are, they go beyond 45 degrees Celsius in summer. And not alone Fiji. Let me give an example of the India itself. In Rajasthan, some of the companies invested 450 megawatt of, and it must be much more than $900 million in the concentrated solar application. They wanted to use sunlight, to heat water and use the steam to move the turbine. And everything was ready, but they never reached that critical temperature that they required. At least in my time, they had not. Where was the problem? The problem was because the data they used about the solar radiation was essentially taken from NREL, or which was collected by the American satellites, and the American satellites didn't collect perhaps that is, I was told, I'm not a scientist, but I was told that the impact of dust was not captured in those statistics. And these companies who used that statistics, somewhere the design went wrong, and the plant and machineries they put didn't come up to the standard that required to make it financially viable. So the issue of technology and the issue of capacity building, that is the training part I told. So when we are talking about harnessing the power of these countries, essentially it means that each country, which has solar resources, and most of them have, they have to put a policy in place, an ecosystem that we are talking about. And essentially an ecosystem means, you address the issues of land, labor, capital, and technology. And now that was the need. And to address that, there was a gap, because if you look at the United Nations, you have every organization. In fact, the membership fee even gets is around $2 billion a year. But if you look at renewable energy, it never got the emphasis or the importance that it should get. Except 2009, the International Renewable Energy Agency came up in Abu Dhabi. But you don't have, you have UNESCO, you have UNICEF, you have WHO, you have everything. But you don't have a world renewable, agency from the UN system. We didn't have it, and that is why when IRENA was there, the International Renewable Energy Agency, in fact, there was a bidding as to how to have the headquarters of IRENA. There is a lot of tough competition. Germany put in 9 million euros. They wanted the head office there, and Vienna put in $5 million. They said we want the headquarters, 5 million euros actually. India also, I think, put it some $1 million and all that. But the United Arab Emirates put a blank check. They're saying, okay, we'll give all the money and you give us the headquarters. That is why the IRENA headquarters came. But between 2009 and 2016 or 15, you find, the solar has made tremendous progress. And there is a general feeling that we need a dedicated agency to address the issue of international, issues pertaining to solar. You take it further and forward. And given that, the sun is very kind and the input cost is zero, and it doesn't discriminate between rich and poor and developed and developing countries, cities and villages, it comes as it comes. And it is much more predictable than wind, because, if you take the probability of not only the sun rising in the east tomorrow, but even the incidence of the solar insolation can easily be captured through, and which usually we do with various softwares. And that is what helps, predicting or estimating as to how much of renewable energy solar we are going to get tomorrow or day after. And that is where this idea of the International Solar Alliance came. Now, let me get back, how exactly it happened. How, I had a batchmate who was finance secretary and then became environment secretary. One day, the environment minister was with the Honorable Prime Minister, and the Honorable Prime Minister was very unhappy that the Solar Alliance has not taken off. And so the minister came back and told his secretary, why haven't you taken up Solar Alliance? So he was surprised, because he never had Solar Alliance coming to the Ministry of Environment. He rang me up and said, look, the PM was shouting at my minister, and I'm told we haven't moved on the Solar Alliance. And after that, things we moved very quickly. We had to, and it had to be announced in Paris. That was 30th of November 2015. Almost 70 countries had come. The International Solar Alliance was, announced. But then that meant nothing. We didn't get anything signed and all that. So the real work started in 2015, 30th November. And then, it's a very complicated process to establish an international institution. If you must, some of you who would have got involved or who have worked in these organizations, they're very, very sensitive places where you have to keep so many things in view. And to build up one such thing, the first thing was, of course, where to have the, you have to form an international steering committee. And so we formed once it was announced in Paris, the next day, we all met. All countries were invited. And we formed an international steering committee. And for next 2 years, this international steering committee will actually, administer the process. And one of the process was negotiation with India, saying that how much money you are going to give for getting the headquarters. India put in $16 million. And of course, they promised 75 crore over a period of 5 years. And it was decided that there will be no membership fee, because most of the countries were in tropical in the south. But then one amendment took place in Paris. Initially it was all the countries within the tropics, but the amendment was whether partially or fully located. And this small amendment had tremendous implications. And that is how countries like USA, the UK, France, Netherlands, they all became members, because they have small islands. in various parts. And I didn't know at that point that it will be so controversial, but later on, many leading countries had reservations as to why this amendment was brought. But that is a good thing, and now we have amended that the treaty that we signed, and we find that the small amendment actually removed the borders, the tropical boundaries. Now, any member country of the UN can be a member of the International Solar Alliance. And when I talk about the framework agreement, I must show you, this is a small booklet that we have. It not more than 9 pages. And usually the country signs at the end. This is how 88 countries have signed this framework agreement so far. And it is again a very complicated process. It has to go to the parliament. The parliament has to ratify in most countries. So the number of countries who have signed and the number of countries who have got it ratified, there is a difference. Only 70, that is 70 countries have ratified. That is, they are perfect members. And the other countries are signatories. And this amendment has not yet come into force after 2 years. You'll be wondering why. Because the condition is that once an amendment is approved by the assembly, 2/3 of the countries must ratify it. Not only the framework agreement, the amendment itself. And it took a long time to get approval from 30 countries. When it went to the UN for registration, they said no, it should be the 30 countries from the member countries who are present on that day. And we found that still we need 2 more countries of the countries who are present on that day. But it is coming. Now, once that is approved, all countries can be members. For example, Japan is a member today, UK is a member, Australia is a member, Netherlands is a member, and USA, of course, now we hope they will come in with the change in government, because Mr. Obama and Mr. John Kerry took a lot of interest in AISA. I'm sure they're coming back. And at some point, China was quite interested in joining. Of late there are some issues they haven't joined. But the countries who are beyond the tropics, Spain, Italy, Germany, Nepal, Mongolia, they're quite interested. Even Pakistan is quite interested to join. And once this amendment comes, they all will get a floor to join. And like the UN has an agreement with the USA, AISA has an agreement with India that member countries can come freely join and speak. There will be no restrictions on their speech or on their travel to attend the general body meetings and other meetings in connection with the International Solar Alliance. Now, where we are located in, there is a campus called National Institute of Solar Energy in Gurgaon, 200 acres of campus. Beautiful. If you visit sometimes, please come. You will see deer, python, speakers, and of course, a lot of solar energy applications, including green hydrogen and solar cooling, solar heating. Number of solar technologies are there. And then what happens is that and in the Solar Alliance, when all these countries come, the headquarters is going to be in Delhi. There may be a shift now, and we will get soil from all the 193 member countries, which will be put in the foundation of the building. This will be the only organization in India which is going to hoist flags of all the 193 countries. It is going to be a symbol of India's leadership. And I must tell you, it was jointly launched along with France and the UN Secretary General. And now coming to the second part, what AISA does to harness the countries, that is the second part. Ashok, would you like me to cover it? Because exactly we finished 35 minutes.
So we can take a small break. Mr.
Yes.
Maligar can ask a few questions that have popped in the Q&A box.
Yeah. And second part, I can make the action part as to what exactly we do.
Sure.
Good, Upendra. You have given overall scenario of solar energy and your efforts of bringing solar energy to the focus of the Government of India and to the international arena. Now there are some questions. Of course, I wanted to ask some questions, but there are 2 questions now. Now, you said that there's so much of expansion of solar energy, and I'm sure you are aware of the manpower requirement for maintenance of this infrastructure created by various states and various countries. Have you thought of any long-term requirement of the manpower and how you are going to build the capacity?
Yes. See, as of today, globally, you find 3.5 million people who have been trained and are working in the solar sector. And but you need a lot more. And each country, they have to do something like India did, the Surya Mitra program, where they train 57,000 people over a span of 4 years. And but then what we are doing, the ISA is addressing that issue, and we are addressing through a project called STAR-C. It's called Solar Technology Application Research Center. We have identified 67 countries, and we have got a hub and spoke model. You put one center in each country, and that will look after the local training, R&D, and the issues of technology. So these 67 we are taking up. This year we have mobilized some $1 million to give it to 67 centers. So you strengthen them. We have just taken up training 35,000 people. We started now. It is all virtual training. We pay to Green Energy Council of India 15 per capita. They have trained already 500 bankers and 500 engineers. So the idea is to train 35,000 from our side as master trainers. But these trainers, when they go back to their countries, they should train more people there. And we also find that many international organizations, they also give a lot of emphasis on this. And as I told you, we also train the mid-career professionals who go back and train more people. But if you look at the global scale, the projection is that 3.5 million people who have been trained and who are employed now is not enough. We need a lot more training, and that is where the private sector is going to play an important role. Most of the companies who are dealing with solar, they train that, they train their own manpower, and that is how it goes on. But we need more educational institutions, more specific courses like energy management courses. But I must tell you, the world is getting geared up, and training these 3.5 million people and giving them work was not an easy job. But things are moving in the right direction.
Okay. Next question is, so far I understand only 36 gigawatt of capacity has been installed in India, and your target is 100 gigawatts. And you are left with only 2 years. By 2022, you're supposed to install, say, 100,000 megawatt of power. How are you going to achieve this? Because now you are not in Government of India, but how ISA is going to solve this problem? Only 1/3 of the target has been achieved, and in next 2 years, are you going to achieve that target of 100,000 megawatts?
See, it won't be right for me to comment on that question, but because I left 4 years back. So, but I read that 37,000 megawatt they have done, 37 gigawatt, if I'm correct. And even if it's around 40, let us say 60 more they want, 60 gigawatt more. And I told you there are 69,000 substations, put 1 megawatt in each place. Give it to, women entrepreneurs, unemployed youth, bring a scheme where 1 megawatt they can put in those deserted places and feed it to the grid.
Okay, next question is on that only. That is, you are using almost about 5 acres per megawatt or something?
For now.
4 acres.
Yeah.
So much of land is being used. The question asked by one of the participants is, there are some rumors that maybe good land is being used. Is it going to affect the agriculture production? If not, what precautions are you going to take?
Well, in India, there is a policy, and the policy says the food security cannot be compromised by solar. So agricultural land, they never use. like Pavagada example I give, it was not agricultural land, it was rain shadow area, desert, or Rajasthan, they use a lot of deserts. So Kutch, Gujarat. But I must tell you, the other day I met a company from Australia called Sun Cable. Now, what this company has done, they are just taking up they've decided to use the deserts of Australia, where the land is very cheap, and they're putting 3,500 kilometers of grid to supply power to Singapore via Indonesia. And out of these 3,500 kilometers, 750 kilometers is subsea, the subsea cables. And so transmission, the technology, the way it is changing, you don't have to really use any even semi-agricultural land. You can use deserts, you can use totally wasteland and transmit power.
Okay, Upendra, you have been in the education sector, Commissioner for Primary and Elementary Education, Secondary Education. And in India, we have 1.5 million schools. And schools also need power. Even if they install a capacity of 100 kilowatts, I'm sure, almost 15,000 megawatts or more can be generated or installed capacity. They have thought of any way of involving schools, because you have passion for school education also. Ashok also has got interest in school education. Maybe each school can be, their roofs are also, we have many sloped roofs. Otherwise also they can be installed.
See, this all depends. I've been to an island in Sundarbans where the government had given solar electricity that was not working. But each teacher had a Chinese-made fan with the 2 panels, and they would come to the school at 10 o'clock, put the panels outside, plug and play. The fan will work on the table because, it's very sultry days there. And so the point is, many schools do use in their own ways now. But it depends on the provincial government. You can, if you have 25,000 schools, and without spending your money, the schools have to pay some electricity bills, they give it to a company who aggregates 1,500 schools or 1,000 schools, and one entrepreneur can actually go supply, run it, and it can be done in that way. The other thing, when you put so many schools together, the cost will come down drastically. So you don't need money to do that. You only need, like Madhya Pradesh has done. Madhya Pradesh took 500 jails, schools, and put together, and they're getting power at the rate of 2 rupees 38 paisa for next 25 years.
Okay, I'll just give you some hint for next talk, whether you would like to cover that subject.
Sure.
What are the investment opportunities in the solar sector? Because many of our IITians and entrepreneurs, and maybe they can also have some startups. Any startup opportunities, or for those who are already big industrialists, any investment opportunities in different sectors related to solar? Maybe you can cover that in our next this thing. Similarly, we have all IITs as institutional members. Any R&D opportunities for IITs, or would you like to involve all the IITs, or at least a few of the IITs, in innovation and research in R&D in solar energy? Maybe these 2 topics you can cover in the coming talk.
If I can start with your second question.
Do you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. If I can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Yeah. If I can start with your second question first about, whether IITs have opportunities for R&D. We just signed an MOU with Delhi IIT to raise funds together globally and create a fund which IIT Delhi will maintain. And with that fund, we will get, PhD students from member countries. We will fund more members. So we are prepared to sign similar MOUs with other IITs, including in areas of R&D, where we have a lot of political will and outreach. We can get funds internationally, but the R&D work has to be done by the IIT. Yes, we are prepared for that. And if you have a combined body of IITs with whom we can talk, either an association of IITs? No?
No, IITs are institutional members of IITACB.
No,
So
is there a common platform, national platform?
Take
Where
note of this.
if there is a national platform, you can talk to all IITs together in one place. We can have an engagement that way.
Okay.
And
what about investment opportunities for the IITians?
see, that is where I will show you this picture. You will recognize him, right? Can you see?
Yeah. What is that?
See
Albert Einstein.
Albert Einstein. Okay.
And look at the way he's sticking his own head.
Yeah.
The question comes, is there electricity connection to this? No. Now, what it has a small panel at the feet of the Einstein statue. Incidentally, I got it from Lima, and the toy store is famous. And now the question is, it's an electronic toy run by solar. And now we are talking about solar revolution. We're talking about 5,000, 10,000, 15,000 megawatt of solar parks. We're talking about getting electricity from Australian deserts to Singapore. But this Einstein, the electronic toy, is a simple thing that promises so much of employment. The whole toy industry can be solarized. And if the other thing, you think of India's coastline, 7,000 kilometers, and you have some 39 towns and cities where you have hillocks, 100 meters, the height you need to lift water at daytime through the solar energy, and run it down during the evening when the peak hour is there. And because of a differential price, you can make money out of the thing. Now, 7,000 kilometers, you can invest billions of dollars. And that is the pumped storage I'm talking about. And sorry. So starting from electronic toys to pump sector, and let us see how many street lights we need in India. Villages need street lights, hospitals need, schools need. You can actually sell 1 billion street lights. And if actually India goes for 1 billion street lights, and the prices will come down so much, even panchayats who are now rich can afford it. So when you're talking about employment, we're talking about investment and environment. These days they're all interlinked. So and that is the part I was coming to in my second part. How we try to create employment, how we try to bring investment, and how we benefit the environment. In this framework agreement, there is something called the preamble. In the preamble, we talk about more than $1,000 billion of investment in member countries. So how do you do that? In two ways we do it. We do it by reducing the cost of capital and reducing the cost of goods and services and technologies. Now, and in fact, this is how the ISA is different from other international organizations, from UN. We don't do too many talking shops, or we don't do too many conferences, consultancies, and all that. What we do is we find out how action can be promoted, and we have got a unique technique called demand aggregation. So the first demand aggregation we did was for solar pumps, because the Honorable Indian Prime Minister wanted that we should give the first benefit of ISA to farmers. So we wrote a letter to the ministers from various countries. Do you want to give pumps to your farmers? Well, came the reply, yes, and 22 countries responded. We totaled it together. It was 272,000 pumps. When we went for a global tender, we found there were 5 companies who were empaneled later. 4 were Indian and 1 was from Denmark, and the prices came down by 40 to 45%. And if indirectly, we had passed on a benefit of almost $1.5 billion to these member countries. And the second thing that we did was, home power systems. It is a 100 watt or 200 watt or 300 watt system, which can look 5 LED bulbs, a mobile charger, and a solar fan, a solar TV or a DC TV. And we just aggregated demand for 49 million. And in the first phase, we just tendered 9 million, home power systems. Tomorrow, in fact, the prices will be known, and I will let you know. I'm sure the prices will come down by 30 to 40%, and we will get good participation from the global industry. But what we are doing for home power systems, aggregating 49 million, we can aggregate the global demand for schools, global demand for airports, as I told in the beginning, that 40 gigawatt is the demand from airports. We can aggregate demand for billions and billions of street lights. or light for schooling, schools, hospitals, jails. Now, the whole idea is you need a lot of solarization at least cost, because most of the member countries won't have the money to invest. So the model, apart from aggregation, is a sort of install EMI type. You pay the electricity charges, and the industry mobilizes the money to put it. So,
okay, now there's
please go ahead.
One question on solar pollution. Now maybe it may be green energy now. What happens after 25 years? How do you get rid of these solar panels? There'll be big sources of pollution.
See, that is a very good question. In fact, we just made a study with UNEP to find out, what is going to happen to the solar waste. Now, if you take 1 ton of solar panel, 1 megawatt of solar panel, and you break up, what type of elements you have a huge amount of copper, you have a huge amount of silver, you have a huge amount of aluminum, you have a huge amount of steel, and of course, you have a lot of construction waste that is there. But if you look at these heavy metals or even metals, they're all recyclable. And you have silver. Now, think of the amount of silver you put in now in 1 megawatt of solar plant in those panels, and after 25 years, what is the price of that silver? What is the price of that copper? What is the price of the aluminum and the steel? So if you can successfully recycle this and extract the metal, you will get a lot of return. And it will actually, I always look at the West and I feel, what a saving bank account is this? I have put these metals there, and the only challenge is, of course, the extraction technologies.
Okay, you can continue your other part of the talk now. Then
Yeah.
I'll ask you some more questions later. Is there any time now?
Yeah. So now, coming back to the second part of the delivery, in the Solar Alliance, we have a governance structure. We have India as the president, we have France as the co-president, and we have 8 vice presidents from 4 regions of the world. From Latin America, currently, Cuba and Guyana are the vice presidents. From Africa, we have Niger and Mauritius. And from Europe, we have the United Kingdom and the Netherlands. And from Asia Pacific, we have Fiji and Tuvalu. We have a standing committee and an assembly. So this governance structure is very critical, because when we went into the issues of participation and how to take decisions, this makes it very broad-based. We don't have too many committees except for regional committees, those who look into regional issues, and a standing committee which takes up all issues concerned. And apart from the government, we meet once a year, of course, in the assembly. 3 assemblies we have completed. Now, in the program side, we have 7 programs, and all these programs would try to create employment, get investment, and help the environment. It's a very simple formula. Now, the program 1 is about solar pumps. Program 2 is about finance, how to mobilize finance for the member countries. Program 3 is about mini grids. Program 4 is about rooftops. Program 5 is about storage and solar vehicles. And program 6 is solar parks. And program 7 is solar cooling and solar heating. Out of this, there are 2 important issues I'll take up in next 10 minutes. Now, one issue is we have gone for, apart from these 7 programs, we have 2 initiatives. One is called ISA Care, where we are trying to put hospitals, solarized hospitals in island countries and LDCs, for which we are mobilizing, we are negotiating with EU for $150 million. And if it comes through, we can actually, take that up. And we have the STAR-C, the training medium, the technology application network that I discussed already. And we have also a Infopedia, a knowledge platform where all countries can participate. And out of this, now we found that, India extended soft loan through Exim Bank of $2 billion for solar projects. And France also extended their loan of 1.5 billion euros. But the question comes, most countries, they would compare these loans with World Bank, with the Asian Development Bank, with African Development Bank. And if at all they find that these Indian loan or French loan are costlier, they won't take it. And so what we are planning now is a World Solar Bank. And the last assembly has formed a committee called International Steering Committee for the World Solar Bank. And if it goes further, we will be happy, if one of the ISA member countries will of course choose to be the headquarters. Some say it should be in India, some say it should be in Luxembourg, but then the committee will decide where it should be, and they will decide through a transparent, way. And this World Solar Bank will be anything like a World Bank, but except that it will promote all projects linked to solar, greenfield and brownfield projects. All projects linked to the communities that we talked about, the women, 2 billion women without access to clean energy, or 700 million that I talked about having no access to energy at all. And even the clean drinking water in access to that. We think in a equity structure, we think initially we'll start with $2 billion. And from the market, we will raise $8 billion. So totally it becomes 10 billion. And we will co-finance with other multilateral development banks. So even if 20%, we will mobilize $50 billion as extra credit to the solar sector. Currently, we get around $150 billion globally. And if we add $50 more billion, it will be $200 billion. And then gradually it goes from 2 billion up to 10 billion. But right now, authorized capital will be 10 billion, but paid up will be $2 billion, and callable will be $6 billion. And I'm very happy that the assembly took a call and they have got the committee constituted. The second big idea we have got is one sun, one world, and one grid. You in fact asked, how ISA creates investment. This project alone, the one sun, one world, one grid, we're thinking of in 3 stages, connecting regions. And the Australian example I gave, but power can move, can be transmitted from India to Gulf and, across Gulf to other countries. And just now we have given a study we are planning to give a study to EDF and TERI. They will complete the feasibility part, or the feasibility report, in 6 months' time. And in the next COP, that is at Glasgow, we are going to launch it in a big way. Along with the World Solar Bank, which UK has already, was kind enough to support, and other countries, a number of countries are supporting this idea of the World Solar Bank. And so World Solar Bank and the One Sun, One World, One Grid will play a very critical role in terms of rolling out projects for globally in various parts. That apart, we have got projects worth $5 billion aggregated from rooftop, from our solar storage, cooling and heating, as well as pump. So whole idea of ISA is to aggregate demand as per the need of the member countries, make projects out of that, and get finance arranged, because we don't have finance until the World Solar Bank comes. And because we don't have membership fee, also we propose that a portion of the money that should come from the World Solar Bank to ISA for taking care of the ISA's requirement. But then when we are talking to IIT Delhi, and we are talking about having something with IITs, it's a very good idea. In fact, the way technology is moving, it is not that Mr. Professor Tony Sava saying that next 10 years, it will be solar everywhere. But, look at the market, solar generators, and solar storage devices, wearable solar. In fact, our own, you wear a hat or a trace, and that makes solar energy. And the type of new designs are coming, tracking. Now you get bifacial, which produces energy from both sides of the panel. And in the frontier, you have, this Monash University, which makes solar panels like silk saris. Or you have got light sensitive nanoparticles are coming, which are put on the new panels. And you have this thin film, solar that is coming. You've got carbon nanotube fabric models We have got solar windows, floating solar, agrovoltaics, which is creating revolution in the agricultural field. You are building integrated photovoltaic, and that is telling about the Noida airport and our letter to the Chief Minister of Honorable Chief Minister of UP, that you make Noida 24/7 from day one. And what Cochin has done based on a barter system, you generate energy, give it to the local electricity grid and borrow at night. Whereas Noida can go either with storage or even barter system or even distant production like Delhi Metro. They get a lot of solar energy from Madhya Pradesh. And same way, of course, Noida can also do, but they have a whole lot of choice. And we have solar schemes, solar inks, solar powered robotic tents, we have solar roads and solar aeroplane. You must have seen the solar impulse that went around. So you have solar watches, you have billions of smartphones which can be solarized. So the opportunities that solar has brought is tremendous. In fact, we do more R&D, you will find more opportunities coming in. And given the challenge of global warming, where we promised to do a lot and we haven't been able to do it, as a result, the promise to keep the global mean temperature below 2 degrees Celsius or 1.5 degrees Celsius is becoming a challenge. At that time, we need a lot more renewable energy to come. But renewable energy alone is not sufficient, because the sun has to go from generation to the houses, because you need cooling there in the globe across many countries. You need heating. We have to utilize the sun there more. And the transportation side, which guzzles a lot of energy and produces a lot of CO2, that also needs to be solarized. So now the important thing is that we have that framework the Indian Prime Minister had told: skill, scale, and speed. So these three things are going to be critical. At what stage we bring technology to the field, or at what speed we roll out the projects, and what skill sets we build to realize the solar revolution. Because if you look at the globe now, it is not merely the question of the sea rising, it's the question of the Arctic ice melting. And you see that is a vicious cycle. Once Arctic ice melts and permafrost gets heated up, you get those organic decomposition takes place, and then you get methane. And once that methane starts, nobody can stop it. And methane is deadlier than carbon dioxide in terms of global warming. And even the rain pattern changes, the oceanic streams change. They're all very, the equilibrium itself gets disturbed. And so speed is very critical, at what rate we do it. And that is where we talk about, you perform, you reform, and you transform. Now, performance is no more enough. And reforms we have tried. Now, actually, we need transformation. And I'm very passionate about the sun, because it's at least for next 4.5 billion years, you don't have to, buy solar energy. And all the coal that we have, even if tomorrow the solar energy becomes near zero cost, and nobody wants to use coal. And today, if you look at NTPC, 2014, we used to go to the power ministry from renewable energy and request them to give 5 megawatts of power so that we mix with solar. And solar was 14 rupees per unit. We would like to reduce the cost of solar energy by bundling it with coal energy. And today it is other way around. NTPC is going in a big way for solar to reduce the cost of coal energy. Things have changed a lot. And the latest, auction of 2 rupees per unit is really a landmark. And to conclude, I remember in the first renewable energy invest we did, there was the managing director of Canadian Solar. He came and said before Mr. Piyush Goyal and myself, and told the minister, look, minister, I would give you 5,000 megawatt of solar power, all made in India, at 5 rupees per kilowatt hour. Today it is 14 rupees. Will you take it? And the minister looked at me, and typically a bureaucrat, I said, sir, we take everything through a transparent process. So let him give in writing. Well, next day he was there, and we said we will go through a transparent process. But Had we taken that 5 rupees today, that day, well, today it is 2 rupees. But at some point, actually, I remember in Gujarat when the present Honorable Prime Minister was the Chief Minister, he had given 12 rupees per unit. And in Renewable Energy Ministry in 2010, we had given 18 rupees per unit. So in the beginning, things are costlier. We have to invest in the market so that later on we get back. Now, I always end with an anecdote. So today my anecdote will be very simple. And it is really a fact that, and it is an anecdote, and it's nothing, no touch or anything. I remember a professor who told that he went to a Latin American market and he was very fond of innovation. And then he found the name of a shop written there. It's called 50-50 shop. And he was very attracted by the name. He went to the shop owner and met and told him, what is this 50-50 business? He said, look, people are fed up with chicken and horse meat and all that. So we have a very new type of mix and 50-50, and it tastes well, and why don't you take and try? So the professor bought 1 kilo of that meat, went home, cooked and ate, and it was all horse meat. So he came back, he said, look, you told me a lie. You told me that it is 50-50, and I took and cooked, I tested, I put all spices, but it is all horse meat. He said, no, sir, I never tell a lie. I took 1 chicken and 1 horse and I mixed it. And that is 50-50. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Is there any time for a Q&A, or I would like to wrap up, Dr. Sushila?
Upendra ji, you did say you want to
5 minutes
stop.
You can take 5 up to 22.
Okay.
I just get out before 6:30. 6:35 I have to attend another meeting.
Okay.
If there are questions, please take up. 2-3 questions you can take up quickly.
Okay. I have one question. Ultimately, what percentage of overall energy we are going to achieve, and what kind of impact solar is going to have on other sectors? Because you are already cross-subsidizing coal, etc. But will it really badly affect already installed capacity of India?
See, if you look at the installed capacity, 36 gigawatt in terms of, to get the whole renewable together, you have around 17% in terms of energy mix, but a long way to go. But what is important is not what level we are currently in, but how fast we can move given the cost advantage. And that is where the issues are coming in. See, the investment in coal is globally coming down. And globally, for the first time, the investment in renewables has taken over in the developing countries, which is more than the developed countries. And then also, if you look, the climate issue is becoming more urgent. And solar is expanding much faster. The one sun, one world, one grid, and the example of Australia to Singapore I gave, this is going to be very transformative. So if you're talking about next 10-year horizon, a lot of things will be solarized. And once we get into transport and the building sector, which we have to, because otherwise, billions of ACs are going to come in next 10 years, particularly in countries like China and India. And, the amount of environmental damage that will occur is historical. So A, there is a need. B, there is a climate, the ecosystem. And C, there is a price advantage. And of course, accessibility, like the example I gave of, a small panel, either in the watch or in the feet of the Einstein toy. So that is why I'm very optimistic, and I agree with, Professor Tony Sava that there is nothing that is going to stop solar, the way it is moving. And the countries have only one choice to participate.
Good. I think we can, any other, okay, let me see. Of course, there was one inconvenient question.
Yeah.
That you said you can have at least 1 megawatt per station. Yeah. And each station, doesn't even have half an acre or 1 acre. How are you going to find 4 acres of land?
Most of the substations, panchayats actually, they have land, they have common land. 4 acres will not be an issue. And this 65,000 substations I talked with the big ones. See, you have 11 kilovolt substations, 33 kilovolt, 66 and beyond. So these are the big ones I talked about. And a lot of land is available or can be, found out. But essentially, the more important is the decentralized way. How many people can actually be made entrepreneurs? How a financing system could be put in place. But to be fair to India, they have already some 40 gigawatt which has been tendered. And they have come with 24/7. So if you take all that, and once PPAs are signed, 20 gigawatt, already, they have tendered, prices have been discovered, only the states have to sign the PPAs. So if you put all that, they will be well in time to achieve the goal without going for this 67,000 1 megawatt decentralized mini grids.
Okay. Anyway, one question, little technical. How do you compare between solar collectors and solar PV technologies? What would be the comparison like?
Solar PV and solar?
Solar collectors, direct solar energy collectors.
But you collect solar energy through panels one way.
I don't know what he means, but maybe, for example, I don't know, solar cooker.
No, there are induction solar cookers. See, essentially, either you use the, that's a, if you look at the spectrum, you have the visible and the invisible part, right? Right now, we are using the visible part in a very inefficient way because the photons strike the electrons. But you can use the heat component, and you can use the hybrid panels where heat and light, both can be used. And they are now calling something called 24/7 thermo panels, which means the heat is captured, and at night the heat is converted to electricity. And so I hope that is what he meant. But
collection of heat and.
Okay.
Okay. I think there are no more questions. You can wind up, Dr. Sushila.
Yeah. Thanks very much. This was an extremely interesting session. I must say that you're a wonderful storyteller, Upendraji. And you led us through the evening with your own story of, starting with how you thought you were going to have an easy job, and you're right in the center of all the possible action there could be. So, and congratulations on the wonderful way in which, things have evolved, and ISA has been able to put and show India's leadership globally. This is probably the first such instance, and it's really wonderful to see this. So I just want to kind of summarize what we've seen today. I think the SDG 7 is affordable and clean energy for all. So that, I think, so Ms. Tripathi today told us very nicely, explained the relationship between equitable and inclusive development and the need for power, and why power is at the center of equitable development. We went on then to say that harnessing power and the huge goal that India has set for itself of 100 gigawatts. And then the discussion was really about how we're going to get there. And we touched a whole bunch of issues, starting with policies, moving on to talk about setting up the ecosystem. And the ecosystem has, of course, government obviously is the one that has kind of pulled this whole thing together, but also industry. And it was very interesting to listen to that story of how you actually enrolled them, brought them in, and got them involved with this whole process. The ecosystem also has financing as a very important part of it. And very interestingly, international cooperation. And that's where this whole idea of one sun, one world, one grid, it's an amazing concept, actually. And it is probably one that is going to change the geopolitics of the world at some point of time. But we'll park that for now. The other elements of harnessing the power of solar for India includes things like the skill and capacity building, and we had quite a bit of discussion around that. The importance of the applications that are going to use the solar energy, and it also talked about solarization of existing equipment and things so that they can utilize solar energy. The very great importance of suitable technologies, whether it's for generation, storage, or distribution, and and the whole range of technologies, thin film, and how it's all evolving. We did have a session on flexible electronics a few webinars ago, and that too is kind of plays a role in all of this. I think you also talked about, when you talked about the ecosystem, there was also the importance of R&D. And two interesting examples, one of a joint initiative with IIT Delhi for R&D in solar, in the solar space. And IIT Alumni Center Bangalore would be very happy to play the role of sort of being an interface with the IITs and between the IITs and ISA to kind of see how we could make those collaborations happen. And the second area was recyclable components and the opportunities that that throws up in terms of appropriate technologies and their development. So ISA and how it evolved, what is the story behind it, how it was set up, a very, very interesting discussion. The World Solar Bank that we expect to see, hopefully, but it's a very different model, I mean, a slightly different model from what we're used to with the World Bank and ADB and so on. And of course, we talked about the need for urgency and why we have to act now, whether it's in terms of sustainability and everything else. And the three mantras of the transformation, which are scale, skill, and speed. And so thank you very much. This was a very enlightening session. And I'm sure all of our viewers go back from this session very, very enriched and extremely encouraged that India is taking a leadership position in solar energy. Thank you very much, most to you for this conversation today, and Mr. Baligar for the moderation. So thank you very much. And viewers, we will have this up on our IITACB channel. Please do drop in and see all of that.
Thanks a lot. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye.
Bye-bye.